You look at yourself sitting in an unwashed t-shirt, eating cold pizza, watching a half-naked tanned hunk cry on national television because a girl didn't appreciate his emotional intelligence, and you feel like a total genius. This isn't just a stupid show for people whose brains melted in the heat. It's an evolutionary gym for your ego, because our brain is an old, lazy, paranoid piece of meat that fears two things above all else: starving to death and becoming an outcast from the tribe. Back in ancient times, the moment someone did something utterly ridiculous in front of the community, they were banished into the wild forest to be eaten by hyenas, which is why we have a primal, subcortical horror of public shame hardwired into us. Then along comes Love Island, a modern Roman Colosseum, where instead of gladiators, you have people with lip fillers and six-pack abs voluntarily making absolute fools of themselves under the glare of dozens of cameras, saying the dumbest things, betraying someone 15 seconds after meeting them, confusing Australia with Austria, and throwing tantrums over how someone poured their coffee. What happens to you at that moment is your brain gets a massive hit of cognitive relief, like a psychological vaccine, where you look at this documented total failure and tell yourself that while your life might be a mess and you might be broke or balding, at least you didn't write a poem for a girl you've known for 3 hours and then get into a fight with her ex over it. We don't enjoy other people's shame because we're evil or cruel, but because it's the cheapest way to feel safe. A free tour of a zoo of other people's mistakes with a thick, protective glass screen between you and the disaster, allowing you to observe these biological experiments and learn that chasing someone like that is embarrassing, manipulating like that is disgusting, and humiliating yourself like that is fatal to your dignity. But there is one scary side effect in this sweet, cozy trap. While you sit on your safe couch, smirking and giving yourself an imaginary A+ for sanity compared to these TV clowns, you quietly become a spectator in your own life too, because you're so terrified of ending up in their shoes, making a mistake, looking like an idiot, getting rejected, and becoming the object of someone's laughter, that you just stop taking risks altogether, choosing the safe shame of a quiet, lonely existence over the risk of being alive, vulnerable, and maybe occasionally ridiculous, which is the real tragedy, because those clowns on screen at least tried to play the game while you just stayed in the bleachers. What's the main problem with modern manipulators? They learn from the exact same dumb reality TV manuals as everyone else, yet genuinely think they're brilliant puppeteers. So let's break down this circus, because people buy into it every single day. It all starts with classic love bombing, where after just 3 days in the villa, they're promising each other a shared future, a cottage, and 3 kids, which isn't love but a psychological assault, where someone smothers you with fake adoration so you lose your bearings, relax, and drop your armor, blinded by the sweet syrup being poured into your ears while they put chains on your feet. Then comes the uncertainty phase, where just as you get used to being the center of someone's universe, they suddenly step aside, eyeing someone else with a raised eyebrow, making your brain melt as you panic, wondering what you did wrong, kept on a leash without answers because an anxious person is completely controllable and will do anything to get that initial fairy tale back. When you finally muster the courage to ask what on earth is going on, out comes the heavy artillery of gaslighting, which looks phenomenal on screen as they calmly smile with the face of a holy martyr, twisting reality right before your eyes by claiming they never said that, you made it all up, or you just have trust issues, until after a few minutes of this treatment, you actually begin to doubt your own memory and sanity, apologizing for being made a fool of. These aren't top-secret intelligence techniques, just a basic training tool to crush your self-esteem down to the floorboards, because a person who feels worthless can be controlled with a single look. We laugh at these scenes on reality shows, but look at your own messaging apps and count how many times you swallowed that exact same poison, apologizing just for asking a logical question. So remember one simple thing. The moment a relationship turns into a quest, where you constantly have to prove you deserve basic human decency, it's no longer a relationship, it's an undeclared war, and if you don't walk away yourself, you'll be carried out, psychologically dismantled, while the next victim happily takes your spot on the sunbed. Everyone loves to talk about sincerity these days, like it's the new trend, the new brand, the new way to sell yourself for a higher price, living in an absolute anomaly where our most intimate, vulnerable human feelings have been turned into a basic marketing tool. Look at how it works on screen. A contestant sits in the confessional, into a 4K camera about their deepest childhood traumas, fear of rejection and pain of past betrayals, looking like ultimate honesty, when in reality it's a cold, pragmatic calculation, because in the modern world, drama sells best. And the louder you weep in public, the more followers you get, and the more expensive your sponsored posts become, turning vulnerability from a moment of trust between two people into a currency used to buy reach. We, regular people, picked up on this sick game, watching it and subconsciously adopting the rules that if you don't broadcast your suffering to the world, it's like you're not even living. So we started converting our pain into content, posting sad quotes, recording stories with teary eyes, and weighing our self-worth by the number of likes and sympathetic comments from total strangers instead of just processing our grief or talking to a loved one. This is a completely distorted psychological operation, because true sincerity is quiet, fragile, and requires a safe space. But when you throw it out for public slaughter, it turns into a cheap performance, creating a bizarre paradox where we display more and more emotional nakedness, yet become increasingly emotionally untouchable, selling our tears, hoping it will replace real, deep acceptance. But fake vulnerability only buys fake warmth. And while you might gather millions of views on your broken heart, when the studio lights go out and your phone turns off, you'll be left alone in an empty room with your shattered inner world, realizing the terrifying truth that you put the most valuable thing you had up for sale, only to receive numbers on a screen that will never hold you. Have you ever noticed how people on reality shows look at their partners? It's not the look of a person trying to discover another universe, but the look of a shopper checking if this specific hunk or beauty matches their personal brand, representing main character syndrome in its highest, most absolute form. The people on screen are genuinely convinced that this whole world, the villa, the cameras, the crew, and the other contestants are just props and background actors in their personal solo performance, viewing their partner not as a living human being with their own fears, thoughts, or pain, but as a shiny accessory, like a trendy watch or a purebred dog meant to look good in frame, deliver lines on cue, and elevate their main character status. The second this accessory starts showing a personality of its own or demands attention to its needs, it's immediately written off as defective and swapped for a new one. We laugh at this narcissistic carnival, but look in your own mirror, because thanks to social media, we've all become directors of our own low-budget movies, building relationships not to feel, but to broadcast, searching for people who look aesthetically pleasing in our joint photos and create the right image for friends and relatives. We've turned other human beings into a function, expecting them to entertain us, soothe us, or meet our rigid criteria, playing at relationships like a video game where everyone around us is just an NPC created for our personal comfort, forgetting that the person sitting across from us has their own internal cosmos that has zero obligation to revolve around our fragile ego. The ugliest part of this destructive narcissism is the finale, because when you treat the world as your solo theater and people as replaceable props, you inevitably end up in total emotional isolation, since props don't know how to love or offer a shoulder when things get tough, leaving you to wake up one day on your pristine, polished stage in the spotlight of your own greatness, only to realize the auditorium has been empty all along, and you spent your whole life performing for an audience of one without ever letting anyone join you on stage. Know what's funniest about modern talk regarding compromises? We took a beautiful idea about mutual respect and turned it into a petty, meticulous barter where everyone sits with a calculator figuring out what they get in return for giving up something. Look at these people on screen sitting down to have a serious talk about their relationship, looking not like two lovers in a dialogue, but a corporate board meeting, restructuring debt, bargaining over who gave up what, and demanding equal payment in return, which isn't compromise, but a commercial transaction using emotions as legal tender. But there's something far worse than this daily bean counting, which is the slow, systematic self-destruction happening under the guise of working on the relationship and finding common ground. As contestants who entered the show claiming to have strong principles and self-worth end up sitting in a corner 2 weeks later, swallowing humiliation, abandoning their moral compass, and convincing themselves it's just normal compromise that all couples go through. No, they aren't going through compromise, they're going through the erasure of their own identity. Because a healthy compromise is deciding what color to paint the living room or where to go on weekend trips. But when you're required to alter your core values, ignore blatant disrespect, cut away pieces of your true self, and rewrite your boundaries just so your partner doesn't leave you for someone else, that's not adaptation, that's capitulation. We do this every day off camera because we are terrified of being alone with ourselves and fear the emptiness, a primal fear of loneliness that forces us to bargain away our dignity to buy the illusion of togetherness at the cost of destroying our individuality. Here is the bitter math of it all. The moment you completely reshape yourself to fit someone else's whims, you lose the single thing that made you lovable in the first place, becoming a convenient, faceless shadow, and the most dramatic irony is that the person you erased yourself for will still walk away from you anyway. Because who wants to be with someone who doesn't respect themselves, leaving you alone without a partner, and worst of all, completely without yourself? Have you ever noticed how people in modern conflicts talk like professional therapists with 30 years of experience? It's an absolute masterpiece in the evolution of human hypocrisy, taking the language of therapy and all its clever, sophisticated terms and turning it into an impenetrable armor so we never have to take responsibility for our actions. Look at the show when someone pulls a blatantly trashy move, betraying or lying to their partner, only to sit down with a look of deep spiritual enlightenment and calmly say they understand the other person's pain. But this is their journey. They're processing their emotions and learning to prioritize their own needs. Sounding like they're receiving a Nobel Prize in self-development for simply being a terrible person. This is the culture of performative apologies, where saying you're sorry someone took it that way isn't an apology at all, but a slick way of calling the other person foolish for taking offense while washing your own hands clean. The concept of genuine remorse has been completely erased from our vocabulary, even though real remorse means hurting because you caused someone else pain and taking full accountability without any excuses, whereas modern polished therapy speak lets you wrap raw selfishness in a pretty bow of self-growth. In real life, we'd become masters of this circus too, where instead of plainly admitting we acted like a complete jerk and feel ashamed, we start lecturing about our childhood traumas, high stress levels, or mismatched vibrations, using psychological jargon as an antibiotic for our conscience so we can check off an apology script and move on to ruin the next person's life. But all this therapeutic philosophy without actual empathy is empty, cold garbage, because you can memorize the entire dictionary of psychoanalysis and learn all the right phrases to build ironclad boundaries. But if those pretty words lack basic human conscience and the ability to feel another person's pain, you aren't becoming emotionally mature, you're just becoming a well-educated, high-tech robot who is deadly cold to be around. Let's be honest, nobody gets on this show off the street, as they only pick people with six-pack abs you could grate cheese on and lips pumped full of fillers, making us think it's the peak of beauty and physical aesthetics, when in reality it's a giant factory producing visual distortion that warps the minds of everyone both on and off screen. The people in the villa fall into a ruthless trap of having to be at 100% around the clock, waking up every morning to put on this heavy armor of tan, pearly white teeth and perfect poses, quickly becoming hostages to their own packaging. When your entire value is built on how you look in a swimsuit under studio lights, you become terrified of showing a single drop of reality, unable to afford being tired, helpless, sad, or silly, forced to constantly maintain the perfect frame. As a result, we see beautiful plastic figures entirely incapable of depth, terrified to reveal their actual thoughts or quirks, lest it ruin the picture and get them voted off, selling a polished exterior that hides a scorched, empty desert inside. The scariest part happens to us while watching this artificial aquarium, as we subconsciously start applying these distorted standards to our ordinary lives, looking in the mirror and seeing a defect rather than a human being, demanding that ourselves and our partners look like cover models 24/7. We evaluate people by their packaging like grocery items, checking off height or body proportions, having played ourselves into visual obsession while losing sensitivity to what actually matters, because depth of character, a sense of humor, kindness, and the ability to listen and stand by someone during hard times cannot be drawn on your face or built in the gym. By constantly searching for the ideal body for the camera, we regularly walk right past incredible living souls, forgetting that even the most perfect abs will eventually sag and fillers will dissolve, leaving you wrapped in the arms of a mannequin with whom you have nothing to talk about in a quiet kitchen, if there's nothing behind that polished facade except the fear of not being pretty enough. The finale of any reality show always looks the same, filled with fireworks, confetti, tears of joy, hugs, and a fat check, showing a couple kissing to romantic music and making us feel like we just witnessed the birth of true, eternal love. Now look at the real statistics, where 3 or 4 weeks pass, the lights go out, the suitcases are unpacked, and 90% of these ideal couples announce their breakup in a dry text post on social media, making you wonder what on earth happened to the love of their life. What happened was the brutal intrusion of reality, because in the villa there was no daily grind, no 9-to-5 job, no mortgage, no grocery runs, no dirty dishes, no exhausted faces after a hard day, and no petty fights over who takes out the trash, as their entire love existed in the sterile conditions of a fake paradise where the only task was to tan, drink cocktails, and perform emotions for the camera. The second that sanctuary vanished and a gray Monday took its place, the artificial sandcastle instantly collapsed, delivering a cruel lesson that we often confuse relationships with the set design they occur in, falling in love with the atmosphere of a festival, romantic dates, initial excitement, and butterfly highs, rather than the actual person, demanding a non-stop movie. But real relationships begin precisely when the sets are taken down and the lights go off, because love isn't a romantic helicopter ride arranged by a producer, but the ability to look at a person without makeup, filters, studio lights, or background music and still want to be by their side. It's the skill to navigate routine, boredom, and fatigue together without running away at the very first sign of mundane reality. Meaning that if your feelings depend entirely on drama, passion, and shiny scenery, you aren't in love with a person, you're just addicted to the show. And when those fireworks inevitably burn out, you'll be left sitting in the ashes with a stranger you never actually bothered to know.